In the heart of Los Angeles, Serhat Gumrukcu, a Turkish-born biomedical researcher, captivated the scientific community with his bold claims of discovering a cure for HIV. His charisma and groundbreaking assertions earned him a place among the elite, leading to high-profile collaborations and substantial investments. However, beneath this veneer of innovation lay a web of deceit and ambition that would eventually unravel in a most tragic manner. Gregory Davis, a 49-year-old entrepreneur from Danville, Vermont, became entangled in Gumrukcu's world through a proposed oil commodities deal. Initially, the partnership promised mutual prosperity, but as discrepancies emerged, Davis grew suspicious of Gumrukcu's intentions. Determined to seek justice, Davis threatened to expose what he perceived as fraudulent activities to the authorities. This looming threat posed a significant risk to Gumrukcu's burgeoning reputation and financial ventures. The potential fallout from Davis's allegations could derail not only his scientific endeavors, but also his standing in the business community. Faced with the possibility of his empire crumbling, Gumrukcu contemplated a drastic course of action to silence his former associate permanently. Early in January 2018, the quiet town of Danville, Vermont, awoke to a chilling crime. Gregory Davis, the father of a young child and a well-liked businessman, vanished from his home under terrifying circumstances. Around 9 p.m., a man dressed in what appeared to be a U.S. Marshal's uniform knocked on Davis's front door. "He told me he had a federal warrant," Davis's wife later recalled. He looked official, and Greg didn't even hesitate. Moments later, Gregory was handcuffed and led outside, his family watching in disbelief. By the following morning, his body would be found by the side of a snowy rural road, with multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso. He had been executed. Vermont State Police immediately launched an investigation. The nature of the abduction, the fake Marshal uniform, the brazen break-in, suggested this wasn't random. It was personal, and it was calculated. "I've been in law enforcement over 2 decades," says Special Agent Carl Stevens of the FBI's Boston Division. From the beginning, this one felt different. It had the fingerprints of something bigger. The FBI joined the case early on, coordinating with local authorities. They needed to figure out who would go to such elaborate lengths to make a man disappear. As investigators dug deeper, the first major break came from surveillance footage. Cameras along a rural highway captured a dark SUV leaving the area where Davis's body was later discovered. The vehicle had out-of-state plates, a detail that stood out in small-town Vermont. "We knew early on that whoever did this wasn't from around here," said Detective Laura King from the Vermont State Police. "This was planned by someone with resources and with a reason." Within days, agents traced the SUV to a man named Jerry Banks, a 35-year-old from Colorado with no prior connection to Davis, or so it seemed. But as the FBI followed the trail, a chilling story unfolded. Banks had posed as a U.S. Marshal. He had shown up with a fake badge, false papers, and a stolen car. But the big question remained: why would a man from Colorado kidnap and kill a stranger in Vermont? He wasn't acting alone, Special Agent Stevens confirms. That much was clear. Someone put him up to it. It turned out that Jerry Banks had been hired, allegedly by Serhat Gumrukcu. The motive? Davis had been threatening to blow the whistle on fraudulent deals tied to a proposed biotech project that Gumrukcu was using to raise millions of dollars. According to investigators, Gumrukcu feared Davis would expose him, not just as a scam artist, but as someone who built a fake scientific empire on forged data and false partnerships. And so, law enforcement believed he arranged to have Davis eliminated. Once Banks was identified as a man in the Marshal uniform, investigators zeroed in on his movements leading up to and following the crime. Cell phone records placed him near Davis's home on the night of the murder. GPS data confirmed that his rented SUV had traveled the exact route from Davis's residence to the rural site where the body was found. When confronted, Banks initially denied everything, but the evidence against him was mounting quickly. "We had phone records, travel logs, financial transactions," said Agent Jennifer Hall, who worked with the FBI task force on the case. All roads led back to him and beyond him. Digging into Banks's background revealed he had no known ties to Davis or Vermont, but one connection did stand out: his bank account. A significant deposit had been made shortly before the murder. Money traced back to a shell company linked to Serhat Gumrukcu. It was this financial thread that unraveled the deeper plot. Federal investigators uncovered a series of encrypted emails, offshore accounts, and intermediaries. Each layer brought them closer to Gumrukcu, who, at the time, was still publicly presenting himself as a visionary in biotech circles. He had the world fooled, Agent Hall said. He wasn't just building a company. He was building a lie. Emails recovered from one of Gumrukcu's associates revealed explicit instructions about handling Davis. They were careful, coded, but unmistakable in their intent. One line read, "Ensure the Vermont issue is resolved before Q1. That issue was Gregory Davis. Serhat Gumrukcu wasn't just a name in the news. By 2018, he had positioned himself as a rising star in medical research. Through flashy presentations, international conferences, and connections to major investors, he convinced many that he was on the verge of curing HIV. He ran a company called Inokian Biosciences, which had secured millions in funding, backed by high-profile individuals. The firm was publicly traded and touted as revolutionary. But behind the glossy brochures and scientific claims, there were cracks. "We started looking at the paperwork," said Special Agent Evan Marshal. "There were gaps, forged signatures, and science that didn't hold up under scrutiny." As the FBI examined Gumrukcu's business dealings more closely, they uncovered a pattern: forged documents, false medical claims, and fabricated studies. He wasn't just misleading investors. He was orchestrating a financial house of cards. But what shocked agents the most wasn't the scale of the deception. It was how far he was willing to go to protect it. He had everything to lose, Marshall said. If Davis went public, the whole thing could collapse. The reputation, the money, the illusion of legitimacy. So he did the unthinkable. Through middlemen, Gumrukcu had allegedly reached out to Jerry Banks with a simple offer: cash in exchange for silence, permanent silence. Banks, with a history of impersonation and a need for money, agreed. What began as a corporate disagreement turned into a calculated hit: a murder for hire disguised as a law enforcement operation. With evidence gathered from digital communications, financial records, and interviews with multiple intermediaries, federal prosecutors had what they needed to move forward. In 2022, Serhat Gumrukcu was formally charged in connection with the murder-for-hire plot that led to Gregory Davis's death. Jerry Banks, already in custody, agreed to cooperate. He admitted his role in the killing and provided further details about the planning, including how he was coached to impersonate a U.S. Marshal and how he was paid through channels designed to hide the true source of funds. Prosecutors described the murder as cold and calculated, committed solely to silence a man who had become a threat to a fraudulent empire. This wasn't just about protecting a reputation, said Assistant U.S. Attorney William Darrow. This was about eliminating a voice that could expose a global lie. The case against Gumrukcu shook the biotech world. Investors pulled out. Inokian Biosciences faced heavy scrutiny, and the illusion that had propped up his public image quickly unraveled. But for the Davis family, no legal victory could restore what was lost. Greg was a husband, a father, said one family member in court. He wanted to do the right thing, and for that, he paid with his life. Serhat Gumrukcu now awaits trial, facing multiple federal charges, including conspiracy to commit murder for hire. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. As for Jerry Banks, he pled guilty to kidnapping and murder. His cooperation helped build the case, but it did not shield him from accountability. He is expected to serve decades in prison. And so, what began as a story of scientific promise ended with a harsh truth. Sometimes, the pursuit of power hides behind a mask of progress, and those who threaten to expose it pay the ultimate price.